My own darling mother, I am just on the eve of going into the greatest battle the world has ever known. So I am writing this letter, requesting that it should be posted to you in the event of my being killed
on the battlefield. I've done my duty best and stuck to everything I had to, and I'm proud to die a soldier. Your loving son, Arthur.
One of the key characteristics of the First World War is that it was fought largely by very young men, many of whom would never have actually left this country before. The idea of travelling to France, just for the day, something that we could easily do now and lots of people do on a regular basis. But back in the First World War, people often didn't leave their country at all. They often didn't even leave the town in which they were born. So to go sometimes halfway across the world was an immense, exciting adventure which was completely unheard of. So for very young men like that, it was very important for them to maintain that link with home. And the only real sort of tangible way that they could do that is through letter writing.
In the period of the First World War, postal communication was really the only way of communicating with soldiers aboard. The telephone was in its infancy, telegraph was expensive and also something that was reserved for military use, generally speaking. So letter writing was really the only way of communicating and was so important for morale.
Dear Father, very many thanks for your letter of the 29th arrived yesterday and an excellent supply of apples today. I'm glad you find my letters interesting and that you're able to form some idea of what it's like flying over the lines.
During the war, something like 75,000 men of the post office went off to fight in the war. And of course, their roles had to be replaced. The first time on such a scale, something in the region of 35,000 women brought in to fill the roles vacated by those who went off to fight in the war. To cope with the volumes of mail and the increase in volumes of mail, a new special temporary building called the Home Depot was built within Regent's Park. This was the largest temporary wooden building in the world at the time and was built to act as a sorting office and temporary sorting facility.
Here we have an original file from the archive showing how the mail is transported from the Home Depot in London to Folkestone, and then to France, to Boulogne or Calais or Le Havre, and then further on to the individual battlefronts.
From the depot in London, mail wasn't sorted by destination, it was sorted by military unit. And the post office therefore had to have access to top secret military information about where different military units were based. So rather than writing a letter to a soldier and addressing it to their location, you addressed it to their military unit, and it was the post office's job to work out where in the world they were based.
Hello, Princess. I was to the front line 3 times, and you can have no idea what it's like. The night seems the worst. Well, you'll have to wait until I come home for experiences and news in general. These letters are of course censored, and I don't want to say anything that I should not say.
It's very important for government that people at home weren't hearing some of the true horrors of the war. It was around controlling military secrets, military information, information on tactics, and ensuring that that information didn't get into enemy hands. A soldier's mail would be normally censored by an officer in his own unit, so they would make an initial examination of the contents of the letters and ensure that they were following the rules.
The army tried to sort of make it as easy as possible for them to communicate with home, even with things like censorship. What they did is they introduced things like the green envelope, which allowed soldiers to write long personal letters home without the need for sort of excessive censorship.
That didn't mean that letter was necessarily not going to get censored at all. It would get censored potentially at the base post office, but it wouldn't be censored by your commander in your unit, and therefore not censored by somebody you know. So you could include more private family matters within those sorts of letters.
Another method that they used was the field service postcard, which is a very basic piece of card where you just cross out the bits that don't apply. So this particular one just says, "I am quite well, I've received your letter follows at first opportunity." Then you'd sign it and date it. And that was a really easy means of soldiers letting those at home know that they were still alive and well. Because, you know, when you were in the middle of a major military campaign, you may not have time to sit there and write a detailed letter, but you could send one of those home and get the message back.
Our dress consists of trousers cut short above the knees, steel helmet, which is a great lifesaver against shrapnel. That is one item I do not like. Shells. Their noise and the whining through the air.
Over a century after the events of the First World War, in order for people to learn about those events and to understand them and to empathise with those people who actually lived through them, the best way now is through the written word. Unfortunately, you know, we're no longer able to talk to veterans themselves, but we still have their written testimony. They're all of immense historical value because that's very much what history is now based on. It's that first-hand written testimony recorded by people who are actually there living through these intensely important events. And they're also very important from a slightly more personal aspect, I suppose, because it's often the case that their family would keep their letters almost as a form of a legacy to what they experienced during the war.
Dear Father and Mother, at last I can sit down and write you a proper letter. I'm now properly clothed and in my right mind again. The job which I'm on with now and which I loathe is writing to the parents and wives of the poor fellows who have gone under. Fortunately there are few, but I've lost a great number of men wounded from the company. Poor old Tatlock, my Batman, was killed quite early on. I must write to his wife. I miss him more than I can tell you, for he has been such a wonderful friend. I have, I think, experienced more in the past 10 days than in the whole of my life so far. I shall have a tremendous lot to tell you all when I see you again. The first time I found the letters and read them, I was blown away by what my grandfather had been through. I was reading them basically at the same age he was when he went through those experiences. It just made me think just how much he'd been through at an early age and what his parents and the rest of his family must have been through as well.
Although I never knew my uncle, obviously, I was quite upset when I read the letter, when I read the contents of the letter. My own darling mother, I am just on the eve of going into the greatest battle the world has ever known. So I am writing this letter and requesting that it should be posted to you in the event of my being killed on the battlefield. My uncle was one of the very first to be killed, actually, because he'd only gone a distance of 200 yards when he was machine gunned and was killed. Don't worry too much, will you, Mother? Try and forget. Just think I am still away. I've always done my best and stuck to everything I had to, and I'm proud to die a soldier. Goodbye, Mother, goodbye, Father. Your loving son, Arthur. This letter was treasured very much by the family and has been kept for many, many years.
So 100 years on from the end of the First World War, it's particularly nice to look at letters which have particular relevance to what we're thinking about at the moment. So we've got this particular one. It's a really nice example of a letter written on Armistice Day, because not only does he talk about the actual process of announcing the armistice, but he also looks to the future as well. Today has been a great day. We knew before 11 a.m. that the armistice was signed and continue to get further information during the day by wireless and other reports. May history record that this was the war that ended war, and God grant that such madness be never loosed upon the world again. If we the Allies can build a new ideal world on the ruins of the old one, it matters little what becomes of the Kaiser and his brood. The sacrifice of so many of our bravest and best will not have been in vain. Let us have a real League of Nations. I wonder how you in England are celebrating this day of victory and the relief from the tremendous strain. I should like to be with you tonight, Dad, and share in the rejoicings, but that I cannot be. So I've tried to put some of my thoughts on paper, however imperfectly expressed.